Just one slide's head up on those who don't know Swisscom. So Swisscom is an incumbent operator in Switzerland. We are the largest fully converged carrier and IT provider in Switzerland, and a market leader in both the B2C segment, but also the B2B, both for mobile and the wireline business. We offer quite a wide variety of services, obviously around connectivity and voice, but also a very strong position in the entertainment business or IT infrastructure, cloud services, cybersecurity. Now, if we look at the topic of the speech, like moving from the telco to the techco, I think it's worth looking a bit back where we're coming from and to better understand what makes it so hard to actually move from a telco to a techco. So for about, let's say, from today's perspective, the initial 100 years of the telecommunications industry were actually fairly simple business. We we installed cables either in the ground or above ground, and we operated centrally organized telecom exchanges, which were initially operated by people and then obviously automated with technology. But it was a very simple and centralized business model, which we executed over nearly 100 years. And of course, one of the important aspects was also safeguarding this business, which is still the case until today. And this started to change in the 90s when we had the wave of liberalization across Europe, when most of the incumbents were confronted with a completely new market landscape in a market-driven development. And we had the nations of the internet, the mobile telephony that had begun to have an impact on society and encouraged telecommunications operators to take their first steps in the digital world. I think today this picture is very different. When I joined Swisscom in 2019 as a CTIO to make a difference in Switzerland and the digitization, I think we encountered a very strong incumbent, which already has claimed a lot of stakes as a digital champion in the country. And this is true also for many other digital or many other operators around the globe. Now, if we take a look at what makes it so hard or the historical challenges that telecom operators need to overcome, I think there are a number of aspects which seem quite important to me. As I mentioned earlier, from a historical perspective, telecom carriers are typically run a completely vertically integrated business model. So we own, plan, build, and run infrastructure from the CP to the service platforms. And this kind of binds the carriers to the existence of their own connectivity, the local access network, which is kind of our unique capability and asset, but also takes up an overwhelming part of our CapEx and OpEx that we spend on a yearly basis. On top of that, because of the large history that we have, telcos accumulated vast amounts of platforms supporting all kinds of technologies, and this creates an enormous complexity that we need to handle and enormous legacy. We have a lot of regulatory requirements and a large customer base with a lot of historical products or very wide product portfolios, which makes it difficult to actually evolve the product, process, and technology platforms. I would also like to say that telcos are like control. Typically, we want end-to-end control over everything, really being in the middle. And this results in a high number of headcounts that we require to run our business. It also makes it difficult to evolve, somehow slow. And we are not used to sort of the ecosystem approach that is predominant in the IT space. To make things worse, there are only a handful of platform providers or people or companies that actually provide telecom equipment. There is kind of quite a strong dependency on these few global suppliers. Also, I think the telcos or carriers had quite limited success trying to sell OTT services, whereas in most cases we stayed sort of in the local market, and other new players actually emerged and used the bit pipes of the telcos to create global business models such as Netflix or the hyperscalers or other entertainment platforms. So how can we now overcome these historical challenges as an operator? So from my perspective, software is absolutely key. And luckily, we have technology advancements that can help all the carriers to overcome their position or the historical position. So we have the disaggregation of hardware and software, which means that all these traditional value chains break up and gives the carriers an opportunity to restructure their operating model, moving into telco clouds, in virtual RAN, cloud RAN, or many other areas. But it also means that we really need to become a software company. The hardware becomes a commodity and differentiation happens on the software side. It's also an opportunity, of course, because this also means that we can use standardized hardware, which can be sourced in a cheaper fashion, and we can maybe also even outsource the hardware parts to other new players. Meaning becoming a software company also means a change in the operating model, whereas many carriers in the past have been used to purchasing everything and integrating the final solutions. Becoming a software company means you need to build up new skills and also develop many new things in-house, building up software development competencies which were not there before. But in the end, this has multiple benefits. It creates faster innovation cycles. It creates different skill sets and new ways of working with BizDevOps models. And last but not least, the chances with AI and automation are really huge for the carriers, as we can digitize all our processes, we can digitize the interfaces with our customers to create a better customer experience at a much lower cost base. It also means that we really need to change the way we think about the world and moving away from this centrally controlling aspect to more an ecosystem operating type model. And I think there are a number of actors which are quite important in this ecosystem aspect. So one are all the cloud providers that have emerged on the planet. In Swisscom's perspective, we have partnerships with AWS, but also with Microsoft Azure in place to use those systems internally, but also going on the market on the B2B space. You need to look at content providers. We are actively pursuing an aggregation strategy on our entertainment platform, working with multiple different content providers and actually aggregating this content to provide a unique experience to our customers. Also on the software side, we are moving to SaaS models, to cloud native models, really recreating the way we execute and run our services for our customers. It's also an opportunity. There are many new vendors entering the new space, so you can not only work with the traditional, let's say, carrier suppliers that were there over the past years, but there are many new startups or other companies moving into the cloud native software space that we can use now to offer new innovative customer services. And then, of course, there are the hyperscaler services, such as Google Messaging services or Microsoft Teams, which we can integrate, providing new communication services, integrating it with the traditional phoning system that we have and provide a unique experience for our customers. So one of the aspects that is sort of worrying us on this space is I think the ecosystem is very important. And today, if I look at this from a European perspective, the ecosystem is very dominated by US and Asian players. And I think it is also in the interest of Europe to strengthen this European ecosystem because it makes it quite difficult at the moment with the whole geopolitical situation. It leads to quite a lot of insecurity. And I think it would be in the interest of Europe to strengthen the ecosystem also from a continental perspective. Because today, only 1 out of 25 global digital companies, which is SAP, is a European companies. All the other 24 are non-European companies. I think this will require a lot more investment, maybe from the state, but also from the established companies. And one of the axes we also see as a solution is certainly the venture capital arm that needs to be significantly strengthened in Europe to create new digital champions in the future. Now, if I look at what Swisscom is doing internally to overcome the telco limitation, we can have a look at the high-level view of Swisscom's architecture framework. So don't worry, I will not bore you with a lot of technical details. But this is just a high-level view of sort of the number of systems we run. We classify them in 6 aspects. And I would just like to highlight what we mean when we talk about radical modernization and simplification. So because from my perspective, I'm convinced that if you want to become a Techco, you really need to get rid of the ballast of the past, which kind of drags you under or keeps you behind, and you need a radical modernization of the architecture. So this means on the one hand, you need to do a massive phase out of historical platforms, for example, 2G, 3G, the old fixed line telephony, TDM. We are moving away from MPLS to SD1. We are retiring copper, and we are really taking out a lot of these systems that we operated in the past. To give you an idea of what we are rebuilding at the moment, I would just like to highlight 2 or 3 examples to better illustrate what we are doing. So for example, on the systems of trust side, we had multiple dedicated systems in place in the past, which were separate for B2B and B2C, for wireline and wireless, and made evolution towards sort of a digital native company very difficult. So we completely rebuilt an identity and access management platform, hosting all internal B2C and B2B customers. And we are currently in the process of migrating all existing platforms to this new platform that we built and phase out all the remaining platforms, resulting in sort of 70% less systems of trust platforms that we run in the coming years. On the network side, for example, we are rebuilding a completely new single optical core, and we are on top of this optical core building a completely new converged IP transport platform built on IPv6 segment routing that will replace all existing optical and IP transport infrastructures that we have, making us completely automated, much less complex. So we have an automated, simple infrastructure that we can involve in a much faster manner with a completely separated underlay from the overlay platforms. I think on the platform side, this sort of separation of underlay and overlay is hugely important so that we can really gain speed in the evolution and evolve our platforms, meaning our telecom services we provide to our customers in a much higher speed. Also systems of insight. So this is all the AI and data lake infrastructure. We are doing massive investments on this side, relying on hyperscaler infrastructures to move in a much faster way. And we also completely rebuilt the systems of engagement on the cloud native layer. So we have already finished on the B2C side and currently migrating the whole B2B interactions on the same cloud native omni-channel layer that we use internally. I think what is important to me on this side is that this enables you rebuilding the foundation, gives you the mode to change your operations model, moving to a completely fully automated CI/CD, completely automated testing, using AI and self-servicing, and lots of other benefits that are important, moving to the Techco, let's say, time age. But technology is not enough. Technology is, is basically just one piece of the puzzle, which seems much more important to me is also that we need to do a huge shift in culture and mindset, which is probably the hardest part of this whole transformation. Because this new operating model will only work if we get the new skills and mindset into the company. So transforming from the telco engineering to the software engineering side, transforming away from I am controlling everything, I'm sort of the king issuing an RFP and people need to come to me, moving to this ecosystem kind of mindset. I'm part of a bigger ecosystem. I am playing my role, but I need other players to be successful in this new world. And I cannot control everything anymore. I think this sort of change in doing business is the most important part. Also moving to more agile and DevOps kind of collaboration models is important. And we have started this journey many years ago using Agile and DevOps processes, I would say nearly over 6 or 7 years ago. And I think we are still not done, probably somewhere halfway through, still many years to go, as this whole sort of culture and way of working transformation takes a lot of time and is something that is, let's say, difficult to accelerate. But from my perspective, it is really important to use the lessons that we learn in software engineering and apply them to the telecom world. One thing that also seems important to me is establishing transformation programs that are really understandable by people. So we have a clear target picture of where we want to go. People understand what targets we want to achieve, and we have a clear roadmap of how we get to this new target state. And we invest a lot of time explaining to the people why we are doing it, where we are heading, and how we are going there. Because if people don't understand it and if people don't support it, this transformation will not happen and it will not be successful, or it will be much slower than we need it to be done. So for this, inside Swisscom, we have a transformation program going on with 3 levers: performing together, meaning this sort of ecosystem and one Swisscom approach, thinking digital first, designing everything for digital interaction, and acting lean and agile, underpinning this new way of working and the new collaboration models that we really want to put in place. Now, I think the real difficulty is really transforming the historical limitation into future opportunities. And this is sort of the real question that we need to tackle. Because what appears to be a limitation on the one side is also a lever to defend the business on the other side. Currently, there is no way around the access networks of the carriers, and high barriers to entry still exist in spectrum licenses and investments required in the infrastructure. Therefore, it is our belief at Swisscom that we need to continue to invest very heavily in the supremacy of access networks, both on the wireline side in FTTH, but also on the mobile side with 5G, and really ensuring that we have the best performance possible on our access network to engage or enable the best net positioning of a carrier. Part of this access network or assets are also the central offices or the metro locations that we own, and we can use to provide new type of services at the edge, being it for retail, for manufacturing, or other sectors which are important. And maybe we can also look at virtualizing the edge in terms of access networks or cloud services, and create new businesses which are existing on top of our sort of local capabilities. From our point of view, also the B2B segment, and especially the customer base we already have, is a huge opportunity to offer new type of services, of course, in connectivity, but also cloud and security, and selling everything we did in the past as software. I think we need to evolve our culture, as I said before, and the real question is really finding a way to leverage our local assets and capabilities to expand in these new fields of software. And on this side, I believe that the disaggregation can really help us also maybe even move beyond the limits that we had today with the access network, which was very local, and also offer a limited set of capabilities in new geographies with less restrictions and regulations that we had in the telecom age of the past. With this, I'm already at the end of my presentation. I thank you for your time, and now handing back to Annie for questions.
Christoph, thank you very much, and you've generated a good number of questions with your insights. So first of all, are you pursuing the integration of Internet of Things modules with blockchain platforms? And what are the use cases for this integration of IoT and blockchain? And what about is it public or private blockchains you want to use?
So on the blockchain side, we are still, I would say, think for me, it's not so clear where on the IoT side where it's heading. We are looking at some examples in the startup space. For example, there are some interesting startups that offer, for example, proof of authenticity. If you purchase a watch, for example, that you have like a proof that it is a valid watch that is really from one provider. But I would say this is sort of new use cases coming up. I think the blockchain is really interesting in the context of Web 3.0, where you see more and more sort of ecosystem type approaches on blockchain appearing, and those are all public blockchain approaches.
Okay, and my friend Chris Lewis asks, what do you see as the end product of a Techco? A simpler portfolio of fixed and mobile broadband? I think that was a bit provocative.
Well, I would say that's sort of the basis of the Techco, right? We will always remain connectivity providers. I think this is our core, and this is the sort of the main reason of existence of a carrier. But on top of connectivity, you can offer a lot of new services, especially in the B2B space. If you look at all the cybersecurity, SASE, SD-WAN, there are lots of developments that enables us to sell new services on top, but it requires a much simpler and more agile sort of technology basis that we, in many cases, don't have.
Okay, and our next question is, how are the changes you describe reflected in new executive level KPIs or metrics? What are the specific indicators of a healthy Techco versus a traditional telco?
That's a difficult question. I would say, many of the KPIs remain the same. So, of course, we look at, NPS, like customer satisfaction. We look at net adds, sort of certain aspects of how we measure our business. And I think those are exactly the same from a telco and a Techco perspective. But we do have a set of measures that we look at when we look at transformation and changing the way we work. Which we look at the executive committee level. So when we look at those aspects, we look at, for example, flow metrics. How fast can we develop new capabilities in the agile value streams? We look at sort of DevOps adoption and really how fast can we evolve or move into this new way of working. And we have a set of KPIs measuring sort of the maturity of our organization, where we stand on that way. I think that's really important, because if you don't measure it, it probably doesn't happen as fast as it could happen.
Okay, and we have Yakov, who asks, why should an operator now develop software internally? Because you have no history of developing hardware in the past. And as you said, there are more vendors than there've ever been now.
From our perspective, I wouldn't go into developing hardware, because hardware is kind of a different animal and space. So, but the software piece, if you look at what is really important for the success in the future, I believe that one of the core capabilities is software development, because everything becomes software defined and software based. So our belief, or my belief, is that we need to have a certain control over this core aspects for the future. And if we only rely on external companies to provide us software, we will not be fast enough and not in enough control of this core capability that will make us successful in the future. So therefore, we have decided to insource a lot of the DevOps capabilities that we previously had outsourced. And we built up our own software and DevOps factories in Switzerland, but also we have 2 centers abroad, one in Rotterdam and one in Riga, because we are really convinced that having these capabilities in-house is a key asset for the future. And of course, this doesn't mean that we will start developing everything. But even if you want to work with a software vendor, if you have no understanding of software, it's quite hard to work with a vendor and also control the vendor. So I think you need a sort of a balance. And of course, we will not start developing a CRM system. I mean, this makes no sense. So we will still continue to purchase standard software where it exists. But in many cases, especially on the telco side, I think it is beneficial to developing some of the pieces yourself to be faster and offer a better customer experience.
Okay, thank you, Christoph. And concerning the radical simplification of the complexity of legacy, how do you see full stack observability? How do you see the role of that in the transformation? And also multi-cloud adoption, which brings new complexity, a different kind of complexity.
Yeah, so observability from my perspective is hugely important. So we are investing a lot of energy in this topic, creating or allowing us to aggregate all the monitoring platforms we have to really create sort of an end-to-end view of what is really going on with the customer service, and if something doesn't work anymore, to identify within seconds where it doesn't work, who is impacted, why it doesn't work anymore, and ideally at one point sort of move down to automated, instant resolution. But so having a view into what you're operating, I think, is the essence of stability. If you don't have an observability, you cannot operate it in a stable way. And this is so that's one thing. And then moving sort of to the hybrid sort of IT infrastructure model, I think we will for a long time continue to have hybrid IT infrastructure. Sort of we will have things running on bare metal, things running on private cloud, things running on public cloud, just because there is no platform that can run all type of workloads. I think this is sort of an illusion. So we will always have different platforms for different type of workloads, and we need to find a way to operate this in the best way. And I think this is something we are also focusing on a lot, sort of this hybrid IT infrastructure topic, because it is a very complex topic. And then we use the know-how we accumulate internally to resell it on the B2B side and actually help our B2B customers operate their own hybrid IT infrastructure environments, because we notice that many of our customers are actually struggling with this because it is so complex, and it will, I believe, become even more complex in the future.
Okay, I'm having a bit of trouble here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I think my
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, good. My broadband's playing up a bit. Thank you now. So from Dean Bubbly, some operators are starting to sell tech solutions for reference designs and acquire technology companies. And does Swisscom see this as the way forward? And for example, Altiostar, among others, and most recently Robin.io with Rakuten, and Geo with Radisys, and so on. Do you think that's a plan?
Well, I think it's an interesting avenue that some of the carriers can pursue. Probably depends very much on your own context. The sort of what market do you have in your home turf? What capabilities do you have as a carrier? And it probably makes sense for some of them, but not for everybody. But it is, I think, a valid internationalization and growth strategy if you have the right capabilities in-house.
Okay, and I think this is interesting, and you did touch on this quite a lot, actually. The shift from a controlled approach, end-to-end control, in fact, to an ecosystem requires new governance mechanisms. And could you share your thoughts about possible approaches to that governance?
So I think first it's more cultural aspect. You need to accept the fact that you're actually not in control of everything, and I'm not even sure if you can control an ecosystem. You can influence it, but there are so many players and so many moving parts, which makes it so hard to control. So I would focus more on the governance side, on what part do we play in the ecosystem, is there a better way of positioning ourselves? Can we extract more value or move into a better position in the ecosystem? This is what we are focusing on at the moment. We have some governance board in place to decide how we work with the biggest partners, so the hyperscalers, or what type of contracts, how do we engage with these companies? I think this is something you need to be quite careful about. But this also depends a lot on your local market structure. What is your positioning? What are you selling? How is their positioning? So I think there is no sort of a unique answer to this governance approach in an ecosystem topic.
Okay, and we've just room for one more. Has O-RAN picked up in telco commercial roadmap deployment, and is it delivering the value promised by the Alliance and its members?
So I think O-RAN has picked up quite a lot of speed. In Switzerland or at Swisscom, we are not using O-RAN that much because we have a very strong relationship with an existing supplier, and we are focusing sort of on real top performance and which I think is not yet there on the O-RAN side. But I think if you look at what's happening around the globe with O-RAN, I think the whole movement made a lot of progress. And it does have the merits of creating a completely new, ecosystem with new vendors, new suppliers, more choice. And I think it's a good thing having more choice and more innovation in the world, rather than relying on 2 or 3 vendors in the whole world.
Christoph, I'm sad to say we've run out of time. We will pass on the other questions should you wish to follow them up offline. And thank you, everybody who asked them. Thank you very much. Congratulations on your new role, and all best wishes for you in your new role.
Thank you very much. And have a great day.